continuing on here, fast forward a little bit. In the years after the war, my father often had nightmares. He would wake in a cold sweat, pulse racing. My mother may have found this somewhat unsettling at first, but she knew he had been a Marine in the Pacific, had seen heavy combat, and had somehow survived against an enemy renowned for creeping around at night, trying to slip into a man's foxhole and cut his throat. She talked to his friends of his who were veterans themselves. One of these was Sid Phillips, also from Mobile. He told her that he had nightmares too, because they had dealt with the enemy infiltrators every night on the canal. Sid advised her not to touch him when he was asleep. My mother asked, "What do I do if I need him in the middle of the night?" Sid answered, "I'll tell you what to do. Lean over and whisper in his ear, 'Sledgehammer.'" The ways combat veterans dealt with their trauma varied from individual to individual. Some tried to suppress it, turned to alcohol. Some probably took it out on their families, and my father started to write. He would get up in the middle of the night and go sit by the fireplace in the living room. He had a small New Testament Bible through the entire war in the pocket of his dungaree jacket, and in it he kept and made notes about locations, dates, and weather conditions. He also kept notes on pieces of paper that he tucked into the Bible. Not long after he got home, he had written a detailed outline with all this information. Armed with this, a pencil as sharp as his memory, and a yellow legal pad, he started writing what was to become his classic memoir, With the Old Breed. Now, you allude to it, but writing for therapy. This is something that I have recommended to a lot of people. I know that I kind of stumbled upon this type of therapy in the fact that when I've lost friends and lost guys, I was often the guy that was going to stand up and give the eulogy at a memorial service. And I didn't think of it the first time, the second time, the third time, but I started to realize a pattern of when you sit down, you write, you get emotional when you write, and you start to put your emotions and your thoughts and your feelings down on a piece of paper. It's a form of detachment. And I think it's very helpful. And one of my friends died, who was in 2017, a friend of mine named Seth Stone. He was one of my platoon commanders in Iraq, and he was kind of like a part of the family. You know, he was like a part of my family. He was maybe like a little brother to me, maybe like a little bit of a son to me, and which made him very close with my son. When my son was, 7, 8, 9, 10 years old, we would surf together. And when Seth was killed in a parachute accident, and when he died, a few months went by. And my son, who is now probably at that time 13 or 14 years old, after a couple months, he came home and he said, "Dad, I'm thinking about, I'm sitting in class and I'm trying to think about the work that we're doing, but I keep thinking about Seth. And it's hard to concentrate." And I said, well, and I thought about that experience I had of writing. So I said, hey, I want you to write him a letter and write his mom a letter and say, well, this is what you missed. This is what you cared about. This is what you loved about Seth. This is what you want to tell him. And do that. And my son did it. And after he did that, he never, he carried on. And so I think your dad writing this, I'm imagining, probably had a similar effect.
I think the writing was definitely a catharsis, a cathartic process. I have talked about that because I firmly believe it. And that's, getting up in the middle of the night, seeing him sitting in front of the fireplace with one of our dogs there on the floor snoozing away. I mean, that's a really pleasant memory. And I mean, it's evocative, I mean, when I think about like the grandfather clock we had on the mantle, and I still remember the sound that thing would make. And my dad sitting there, Holly, the dachshund, which I talk about her a lot because, God, she was there for all of it. She's over there snoozing away. And my dad just sitting there scribbling away. And here's a guy who has made it home to a good life. He's got his beautiful wife, my mom, asleep in the next room. He's got his two boys, my brother and me, asleep in the bedrooms. And he's sitting there in the embrace of kith and kin writing. And he has to take him back. He has to take himself back to a place where you guys know what I'm talking about because you've been through it. But he's imagining, he's got to mentally put himself back into the place where it was the worst time in his life. And, and if I'm getting into this too soon, we can go back and revisit. But when you write something like what he says about Peleliu eroded the veneer of civilization and made savages of us all. I mean, I think about the dichotomy of you're in that safe place, a father and a husband, but you've got to mentally get back to deal with that and factually get it correct and tell that story in a way that your buddies who think about it, he knew all his friends were probably going to read With the Old Breed because they were all in their, younger than I am now at that point in time. I mean, that was a real mental burden for him, which helps explain why when it got published, I talk about a letter I read that he had written to Stumpy Stanley, who took over K Company after Captain Haldane was killed on Peleliu. And he said, With the Old Breed's about to be published. I can lay my pen down and focus on my family, my career. And this has been an unpleasant task. And yet he had to take that burden on and deal with it, masterfully.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'm just going I just can't let this slide because you might try and do this again. You cannot say that we know what it was like. Like, I'm sitting here with Dave Burke. Like, just so you know, we will not accept what these guys did was far and away beyond anything that we ever experienced.
Well, you have a better idea than I do. I mean, vicariously through my dad, but
Yeah, there's I just wanted to make sure that I make that clear. There's no one sitting at this table that believes we did anything even remotely close to what these guys did. Just fast forward a little bit. Your brother John's born in 1957. Your dad gets his PhD in biology, the University of Florida. Moved to Montevallo. Am I saying that right?
Montevallo.
Correct. In 1962. You're born in 1965. He's an assistant professor of biology. This is when you're watching him write. They built their dream home on Cardinal Crest Road.
Yeah.
Got some property. And your mom has to start typing this. Your mom, I don't know if she got volunteered for this duty.
She got voluntold, as we say. Yeah, she passed away November 2022, Jocko, but I did not know that until, we were talking about it, and I said, take me back, Mom, to, when you started typing the manuscript. She said, well, I only typed the Peleliu part. Your dad's secretary at the University of Montevallo typed the Okinawa part because then he got a grant. So that took over and his secretary typed the rest of it. But she said, she said, at first I didn't want to do it. And now you got to think about it. We didn't have cell phones and laptops. I mean, my dad did not know how to type. And so he's writing this manuscript, and she said he came to me and said, will you type this so that the boys will have something more? Because his writing was really kind of hard to read, to be honest. And she told me, she said, Henry, I really didn't want to do it. And she said, but he told me, well, Shug, if you don't do it, I'm going to have to pay somebody to do it. So I started doing it, And
she was the one that originally said after she started typing it, like, hey, this isn't just a memoir for the kids.
Right.
You should publish this thing.
My mother was a very wise and prescient lady. And again, as I have said, my mother inspired me to write my book. She inspired my dad was always going to write With the Old Breed. That book was in him and was going to be told, but she inspired him to get it published. Mm-hmm.